Hi there, welcome back to the program. It is great to have you with us. Well, this week, Aussie ag tech The Yield, which uses the Internet of Things, data science, and AI to anticipate microclimates, secured another round of Series A funding from Japanese and German tech giants. We're pleased to welcome founder and managing director Ros Harvey to the program. She says that the latest funding could be used to help scale the business internationally. She's joining us live via Skype in Sydney. Hey, Ros, welcome to ausbiz. Congratulations on this $11 million in funding that you've got from, some pretty big names. I think you're allowed to name drop at this stage of your company's development. But Yamaha Motor Venture, Silicon Valley-based VC arm of Yamaha Motors. How did this come about?
Yeah, look, we're absolutely delighted both with Yamaha and Bosch's investment in the business. And really how it came about is that Yamaha in particular, which led the round, specialises in robotics and what's called specialty crops, which is a little bit like horticulture and vines, for example. And really, we've had a long-term relationship, the way these things sort of tend to work. And then, when we were coming into this round now, essentially Yamaha stepped up to lead the round, and Bosch, who's been a long-term investor in the business, also joined. So, we're really, really delighted.
Yeah, and so, how many ways to spend $11 million, an additional $11 million on top of the 32 you've always raised, but
32 altogether. I wish it was 32 altogether.
All right, so 32 altogether. Don't want to nickel and dime things, but what's front and center? Where's the focus right now, Ros?
Right. Look, really where we are is focusing on product, which is obviously, critical, including our data science capability. Essentially what we're building is mathematical robots that allow us to scale this AI very, very quickly. And in the sales perspective, in the current sort of COVID-19 environment, what we're really doing is looking at how we can work with most of our customers are in fact multinationals. So they're global businesses and they have a presence in Australia. And what's fantastic about that is that we can work really deeply with them here and then scale globally in partnership. So we've always seen ourselves as an Australian company, but a global business. And really, honestly, Australia is such a fantastic place to be involved in innovation in food and agriculture because of the particular environment and the very innovative businesses that are here.
And is that the advantage of having Costa as one of your main customers locally? You've effectively been able to test your products in the active market with an active large participant and then effectively roadshow that success to some of these prospective investors.
Correct. Obviously, that's a huge advantage. We're a B2B business, so we sell to large corporates, and Costa is a very important, agri-food business, a pioneer in many ways in Australia. And, as I'm sure your listeners will be aware, is that they have a global relationship with Driscoll's, which is one of the biggest berry producers or provider of genetics in the world. So, really most of our customers have these sort of global international relationships because if you're growing and one of the key ways you seek to diversify risk is by growing in different production environments. And this is really important in an industry that's based on agriculture, which is subject to the vagaries of weather.
It's not just subject to the weather, it's subject to the length of time to be able to find these customers. It's not as simple as door knocking in other businesses and asking, would you like to buy our software, our Internet of Things? How long do general deals take in this type of product and technology?
Well, there's a really big difference between those that we, initially started what we would call pilots back in the day. It feels like a while ago now, where we really laid the foundation of looking at the use cases and how we actually generated a return on investment. And what we're finding now is that sales cycle is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter, because the more that you establish how you can deliver a very clear return on investment, then in one category, it typically is very applicable in the same category. So, that's the way we've really always approached the business, is understand how you're going to create money for your customer, do that in a very systematic way, and then scale both with them, but also move horizontally.
Now, Ros, I know that your business hasn't been completely COVID recession proof, so to speak, because you did have an investor pullout as the pandemic sort of hit its peak. But generally speaking, you mentioned that you're dealing with these multinational corporations. How have the conversations been going through this pandemic? I mean, at the very basis of what you do is food. So in some ways, is this business sort of recession-proof, pandemic-proof? Because there's no shortage of need for food.
No, that's totally true. Look, the first thing I just want to acknowledge the incredible hardship that COVID-19 is, playing out across the world. And obviously we have great empathy for people and families who are affected by this. So, number one, obviously it's really a difficult time that we're all going through. I suppose, on the silver lining of it, food is an essential service. People need to eat. And so in many ways, our technology is helping address the challenges that COVID-19 are presenting in the food industry. And typically that's around how do they access labour, it's, access to market, and it's also about how they manage distributed assets remotely. And our technology by its very nature helps solve those problems. So our conversations with customers, have been very, very positive. And many of our customers, actually think that it's giving a whole new meaning to the word clean and green. I mean, Australia has always traded on this, this idea of clean and green production. But you can imagine that consumers globally are increasingly concerned about, how their food is produced, packaged and transported. And in many ways, the Australian response to COVID has been, so positive that you almost see I think the industry is hoping there's almost like a COVID premium, if you like, for produce grown in Australia. So it's been very, very positive in terms of, I think, the corporate food sector where we're working, corporate growers are really looking at how they get the best return on the assets that they have. And obviously our technology is designed specifically to do that.
And so which countries are on your wish list at the moment? Obviously, you've got plans to spend that $11 million, not just put it in the bank. Where do you think that's going to get best used and utilised?
Look, honestly, in the next sort of 12 to 18 months, we see it as very focused in Australia and New Zealand. We did have intentions to open an office in the US, and we already have customers in the US, and we had started that process. But in the current context, really, that just doesn't make sense. And so while some of, we can follow our customers anywhere in the world because a lot of our product is, cloud-based. In terms of opening a presence, it's obviously constrained at the moment. Part of what we're really excited about is that we've got, really strengthening our balance sheet so that when we get a clearer idea about the post-COVID market, that we can be in a very strong position, much like a slingshot to say, how do we sequence both our product, our data science and our go-to-market strategy to best take advantage of these, of the post-COVID environment. And I think that's going to be really important for all businesses, but particularly early stage businesses.
Ros Harvey, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for joining us on ausbiz. We'll be tracking your progress as it happens.
Thank you very much. Great to join you all.
Yeah, good story. I just find the whole ag tech space fascinating, and when we hopefully speak to Ros in the future, I'd like to get a better sense of how the sort of community and the business here in Australia is going overall.